But welcome and thank you for being here. I'm Adam Shaw. I'm the founder of Grid Innovation Hub, and I'm incredibly happy to have you here at the Generator Reliability Summit. Whether you're joining us from a control room, a compliance desk, a regulatory office, or if you're calling in from the tech side of the world, you're in the right place today. We built this event to bring people together from our legacy energy companies, legacy energy firms and tech companies to help accelerate innovation in the reliability and compliance sector of generation. The grid's changing faster than the frameworks designed to govern it. Data centers, AI loads, they're growing up at a huge scale. Variable generation is colliding with variable load in ways nobody was modeling just 5 years ago. NERC is moving quickly to address it. Operators are scaling teams and tactics, and technology is reshaping how we handle compliance and operations. And everybody who is involved in that is here today as an attendee, a speaker. We have tons of really great folks to have conversations about this, and that's what today is really for. So over the next few hours, we're going to hear from NERC directly on what's coming from them and how to get involved in shaping the standards. We'll sit down with one of the most innovative solar CEOs that I've met in the industry to talk about how compliance data is becoming a profitability lever and how they're handling increased scrutiny on reliability across ERCOT and other ISOs. We'll get a tactical look at how AI is being applied to GADs and other compliance automation and generator performance from Integ. We'll also have two expert panels, one on scaling compliance operations for large load growth, and one on innovating technology on the grid. So throughout today, you'll hear from leaders from NERC, NextEra, Integ, Enera Power, Aon, HSI, the LDES Council, NL, and more. Two quick notes before we get started. This is a working event. Questions are highly encouraged. Just drop them in the chat or in the Q&A. If you drop them in the Q&A, it's a little easier for me to scroll through them and find them. Second, use the networking time throughout the event. In between sessions and after the event, there will be breakout rooms based on your interest that you can select into. Also, a quick thank you to our presenting partner, Integ, for making all of this possible. You'll hear from Amit later on the technology that has been powering reliability and operations automation for the last 15 plus years. With that, we're going to get into it. Our opening keynote is someone who sits at the absolute center of the industry, of how this industry adapts to change. Jamie Calderon is the Director of Standards Development at NERC, where she is responsible for making sure NERC reliability standards are keep pace with the risks emerging on the grid. And as you can imagine, in moments like this, with huge data center growth and generation mixes, the job has never been more consequential. Jamie joined NERC in 2015, and before stepping into her current role, she was the senior engineer working on reliability assessments and the compliance monitoring and enforcement program. Before NERC, she was a transmission planning engineer and bulk power dispatcher at MEAG Power in Georgia. So she brings both the standards lens and the operator's lens to this work. She holds a degree in electrical engineering technology from Southern Polytechnic State. Please welcome Jamie Calderon. Awesome. Jamie, are you with us?
I am. It says I'm just joining.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Really glad to be here. Thank you, Adam, and thanks to everyone for this conversation. Adam, you nailed it. Like, we're at a pivotal point right now in industry. Our industry is moving faster than it ever has. Traditional load, traditional generation, all of that has been changing over the past 20 years, and it seems to be picking up. So standards has a place where we draft reliability standards. I'm going to go through a couple slides, but really I want to focus this and have it be more of a conversation. So we'll hold some questions to the end. There's a lot of material here, so we'll just provide the slides for information for you. So if you haven't heard of NERC before, which is probably doubtful, but just in case, we have been authorized by an act of Congress to be the electric reliability organization for the North American bulk power system. This includes the continental United States, and of course, we work with our Canadian provincial territory partners to bridge that up. So we've got a lot of things that are in the cooker right now. We have standards that are in play, a lot of projects that are in play. We don't start with standards. We always try to start with guidance, building industry common knowledge, building those expertise and white papers and technical references before escalating to the point of a reliability standard. As we're seeing this year, we've actually had to move quicker. And as these issues begin to be identified, we actually have been moving more quickly towards standards, especially as the stakes get a little bit higher, as our world gets smaller, more interconnected and distributed. We have more points of more vectors of attack, and just more things that we have to consider as we're building out the system that we continue to live and thrive off of. We have a process for developing our standards, which is currently going to go through some overhaul, but the fundamental aspects here do not change. If you don't know that industry writes the standards, do I have news for you? I always like to use this as a little recruiting pitch because we facilitate the process, but this is something that's unique in the world. We have an open and transparent process that includes industry as part of the development itself. And actually, those are the folks who have the pens in their hands when writing the standards. So we provide guidance, counsel with our engineering staff, compliance staff, legal staff, and of course the standards developers will help move this forward, especially as we're trying to coalesce around these consensus building activities on these very complex, dense topics, or some of the newer technologies that some have integrated into their systems and some have not. So we want to make sure that we're being very clear. Uh, we don't want to get into the how. Standards shouldn't be so prescriptive that's like do exactly this, but it should be meeting an objective, demonstrating that you've been able to evaluate and mitigate a particular risk, and also meeting some form of performance threshold. But all of these things should be somewhat entity flexible. Some entities exist in a vertically integrated utility, some are operated in a market, some own generation only but don't operate. There's any flavor of actual NERC registered entities these days that we need to be a little bit more broad in our approach, especially as we're talking about scale. Some who operate a large footprint within their interconnection have the same obligations as those who are much smaller, depending on their functional scope. So we want to make sure we're being cognizant of costs, making sure that we're being diligent as to what gets into the standard, and allowing that flexibilities for entities to be able to demonstrate how they've met the measure. And that's something we continuously strive to deal with. There's always going to be folks who want to see it more prescriptive, so just tell me exactly what I need to do to comply. And then there's other folks who are going to want to see it broader to say, we're going to need a little bit more flexibility here because of X. So we want to make sure we're threading that needle. So there's always a lot of conversations during drafting development, but we really can't do this in a bubble. We need industry part of the process. So we'll get into more information if you want to get involved in an NERC standards development project. But even if you aren't able to participate on a drafting team, we collect feedback. Anyone's able to join calls. They're open and transparent to the public. You can just listen in, no obligation for a call or two, see how the development process works. And sometimes folks who are what we would call observers in the situation, they attend every call. They're providing feedback, and sometimes they get assigned work depending on how active they are and if the drafting team is readily acceptive of their opinions. It gives something for you to kind of stew on if there's a particular area of topic that is prevalent in your company right now, or just of interest to you, just to get invested and see how you can get involved. There's other ways to do this. You don't have to necessarily vote on the standards or go through the balloting process, but we still want your voice as we're going through each of these. So I won't bury the lead. We'll start with computational large loads. Of everything we have going this year at NERC, this is really the hottest item that we have because we see these moving faster than anything we've seen before. We've got just a whole new system than we did, even when I started, not too long ago, where we had this bulk power system that just would clear large transmission lines and went out to the capillaries of the distribution system. That's no longer really the case. We have generation installed at every voltage class. We have load that's coming on that are the size of nuclear units, whole plants actually. So it's a much different world than it was 20, 30 years ago. But the data center increase right now, I'll say, is escalating so fast. And there's a lot of conversations about this. So our large load action plan QR is in the bottom right there. You'd be able to look to see all of the things that we're doing. But we're moving in tandem with registration and our engineering teams with the compliance staff, making sure that we're putting forward a comprehensive plan to tackle these this year. Our process doesn't normally allow for a project to be finished in less than 12 months. That's really hard to do in our current process, but we're doing it this year because we know the need. We know that this is really affecting the industry. We know that the challenges are vast and very complex, but we need to make sure that as these large players and users of the system interconnect, that they're doing so reliably, that we make sure that they're able to ride through faults. We make sure that they have constant communication and those clear lines of communication with their transmission owners and transmission planners. Currently, right now, we'll get into a little bit more details of the project, but this is our largest project right now. So we have our plan to simultaneously update our registration criteria, as well as drafting standards, as well as putting out technical insights. So what that looks like is in three parts. The registration team is putting out modifications to our rules of procedure, guide and direct how we will accomplish our mission, which is to safeguard and protect the reliable and secure operation of the bulk power system. This is a really vital time to make sure that we hit this correctly and quickly. So while we're moving forward, the registrations, modifications to our rules to open this criteria up to allow these users, we are also writing reliability standards in parallel. So we're working with those teams, as well as the engineering folks who are putting together technical insights, white papers, and most recently alerts, which we'll get into. Now, the alert system is really just in these three categories. One, very purely advisory. We're looking out for information, trying to get a little bit of a level set as to where we are. Level two, we've already identified that a specific need has to be addressed, and so we recommend specific actions be taken. With level three, which is what we did just recently with computational load earlier this year, we did have a level two alert last year, and this year we've already just put out the level three alert to ensure that we're really taking these actions seriously and putting forward not just recommendations but required actions, also bringing back some information that we can use to inform future work. We know that we got to move quickly, and we know that we're not going to get it 100% of every single thing at the first pass, and that's not the goal. The goal is to make sure that we get those essential actions covered in the short term. There's going to be a lot of things left to do with large loads. It will not be done after this year, but similar to any other generation type, we know that there are some core aspects of how they interconnect reliably that we need to make sure that we accomplish this year for users and large loads. So the level two alert findings, after the level two alert in September of last year, we did issue a report taking some recommendations to mitigate actions. Of course, you can have the QR code here to the level two alert and the summary report. Do encourage you to at least check out the summary report. And got a lot of information back as to what people were doing. And we didn't see a lot of procedures, specific procedures on how people were communicating with integrating these new user types, nor processes. And we were really just waiting, industry's waiting with bated breath to see what is the guidance before we start doing this, or we're already having to do this and retroactively getting a little worried because we don't know if our compliance programs will be sufficient to cover what reliability standards or other compliance obligations may come. So we want to make sure that we're providing as much guidance as we can before we get through this process of registration and reliability standard development. So part of these alerts is really to do that, is to get information for us, but also to provide information to industry. We're not the only ones that review this data. We have an industry-focused reliability, security, and technical committee where they go through this type of information, depending on their scope of interest. There's many different working groups, one purely devoted to large loads now, or computational loads, as we refer to it now, those being like data centers and the crypto mining centers. We need to make sure that industry has the most information possible for those who are putting out guidance or for those who are working with us on developing standards. A level three alert we just released in May 4th. So we're recommending some near-term mitigation actions. Those things that we identified from the previous alert and from additional conversations with our large load working group underneath that technical committee, that we make sure that we get at least these things being done. So there's not going to be a compliance obligation for these on the onset, these are the things we know are going to be built into the standard and things that we need to have accomplished. So entities are supposed to or required to submit their responses by August 3rd if they are applicable to this alert. So there's going to be a lot more questions, I think, on this particular alert. On the standard side, we're not involved with the alert itself, especially while it's in progress. We do use the summary report and recommendations that come out of that from our engineering teams and consult with them. I won't be able to have too many questions that I can answer on the level 3 alert today, but I would like to collect those and take those back, and maybe we can talk about sharing those. The level 3 alert broke down into 6 different categories. One, of course, we need to know what the system does, or at least simulate does. So we, are updating our models, updating studies, making sure we have clear and fast response instrumentation for recording data to ensure that we're able to capture these voltage and frequency excursions as they occur. And then, of course, how the local systems responds to those. Commissioning, how people are working with these and interconnecting operations, which includes the instructions like to and from the transmission operator, establishing those communications. So if there's a problem and the transmission operator needs to do something like unshed load or implement some other type of operational guide that allows them to get around or prevent a particular contingency from taking out part of their system, there need to be established protocols in place for communication. And of course, protection and control, making sure these things, they're not just tripping off or, continuing to operate when they should not be operating or operating with a poor response during a particular stressed period of time. This is all seemingly obvious, but it's not going to be easy to do, especially when we have folks who are not familiar with NERC. Traditionally, we have electric utilities, generator owners. Those are the folks who've been in the room this whole time. State commissioners, et cetera, everyone who's been interested in this. But now we have a whole new user set that they have been using the system and they know that there are some measures that they need to comply with. But to the level of detail, that's going to be a little bit more challenging for us because it takes a minute. We've got an acronym for everything. I probably could do this whole presentation using just initialisms, but making sure that we're being very clear in our communication, bringing people into the fold as to what we are trying to say and what's really important and what we need from them. And also, really, to know what people need from us. Often that's just clear, concise information, especially when it comes to compliance. We want to make sure that we can provide that. It's a moving target as things continue to evolve. So we need to build these relationships and, more importantly, build trust. This whole thing works on relationships and trusts. NERC is in just a unique spot because while we are delegated the Electric Reliability Organization, we are not FERC. We are not the Department of Energy. We are not the Energia up in Quebec. We don't have that same level of structure. So we're private, not for profit, and we work with industry. So this is going to be a lot of back and forth exchange over the next couple of years, very quickly in the next few months, but it's an ongoing conversation. So we want to make sure people can get involved and participate. Our timeline, again, is very aggressive this year. Just going from Q2 through December, we are looking at getting a draft out and getting that done. As of today, we have a drafting team in place. We have a new advisory board in place, which is almost 100 plus members, I believe, that are helping both the drafting team and the registration teams with context and providing additional information. There's going to be a lot of questions that the drafting team's trying to move through very quickly. They're already a dedicated set of experts, but we want to make sure that we have every tool available and that everyone has a chance to have a voice in this process, especially one that's notable. We've started both of these teams, and then of course we're going to be requesting authorization to start drafting next week. On our drafting team's calls yesterday, they just finished their project scope, making sure that they had reviewed all the comments the industry sent on that scope. And they're ready to get going, which they will do starting next week. It's going to be, again, a tight couple months. We'll make sure that it gets done, though. Not our only area of focus. We, of course, have, I think, 25 or 24 active projects right now. The continued decentralization of resources. We don't just have large generators upstream connecting at 500 kV. Generations everywhere. Distribution side, it's a sub-transmission side, and every scope in terms of size. So we need to really focus on how the system responds electrically, especially as it changes to this degree. No longer just the straightforward feed out to the distribution. It is becoming a mesh. The changing resource mix, this is something we've talked about for about 20 years. I'm not sure if that's going to be anything unfamiliar for you all. We don't have as many coal generation being built these days, and nuclear takes a long time. In the future, we might see some small modular reactors. That would be, I think, great for baseload. But right now, we see still a lot more increase in natural gas generation and issues with that gas electric coordination, because the gas pipeline industry, they've got interstate regulation, but they don't have a reliability type organization like we do for electricity. So there's a lot more that we've been doing with the gas industry, making sure that we have line of sight as to where they see issues coming, where there might be bottlenecks, so we can plan ahead and work with the engineers to ensure enough guidance is being provided out to industry through our assessments, through our reporting, to make sure people say, here's where you need to focus in the next 10 years. This is something that we see is going to be a problem. We see increasing extreme weather events. This is the extended drought conditions, the increased consumption of water, low snowpack. This could have dire consequences on agricultural, of course, everything, but also the ability to have run of river for hydro, the ability to ensure that we have enough, water for cooling for some of these facilities that are not connected to a larger body like a lake. It's going to be a challenge when we have, I think in Utah this year, I think there was no snow. I was talking with someone who was in one of my, who was in one of the cities up there, I think Park City in Utah, and she was just relenting that there was no snow in the mid-December, and they were just shipping people off to a different resort. Unheard of. So we're going to have to continue to see what level these events have on the system. Are they increasing in magnitude? Are they increasing in duration? Are they increasing in frequency? And we're seeing a lot of yeses to these answers or to these questions. Wildfires is our concern right now. We actually have a project we're about to escalate and convert more to focus on the wildfire concerns as those continue to really wreak havoc on a lot of landscape all at once. And we need to make sure we've got some semblance of mitigation, preventative, and communal resources in place to ensure that people can survive and the system will be able to come back from some type of event. We're somewhat leaving the preventative stage for a lot of these conversations as we get to wildfires and get more into conversations of resiliency. There's only so much that you can protect. You can't build everything underground. You can spend infinite money and still have problems. So we're needing to make sure that we put in solutions that are in place, that make sense, and that, of course, have the ability to ensure that there's resiliency on the system. Changing load, large data centers, crypto, electric vehicles, a lot of electrification, which is great to see, but at the same time, it changes the characteristics of the system, how things operate. We need to make sure that these are operating correctly. Lastly, cloud, rate of change, and AI. The rate of change of technology is increasing. How people are using cloud technology is not new. We currently have a project in place working on how to ensure that there's reliable practice in regards to integration of cloud technology. I know folks want that guidance. In addition to that, we know folks are already starting to use more of the AI tools, more specifically the large language module type tools. There's always been some form of machine learning in our industry going back, maybe not always, 20, 30 years, looking at some type of machine learning. But now with these tools that are being updated frequently, and we're in this fast, quick pacing industry, artificial intelligence is going to be really interesting. We've got a project that will need to start up for it. It's not currently active, but it's something that we need to focus on. We need to make sure that people, as they integrate these tools into what they do, that we're able to ensure that folks are able to ensure compliance, sure, but make sure that they're mitigating the risks and their exposure primarily. Supply chains, both physical and digital, continue to be something that we keep our eye on, making sure people have line of sight as to where their parts are coming from, their equipment are coming from, their software patches, just that ability to have assurance because you don't own or are responsible for all of those things upstream. So we need to make sure that we build in some additional guidance for that. I have a list of high priority projects here that we're also going through. I've spoken for about 20 minutes here, so I want to leave some time for questions. There's all of these are posted on our website. If any of these seem interesting to you, please check them out. These again are just the high priority projects. We're trying to wrap these up this year. In addition to this, some have currently gone out for ballot and have some more information. Some have currently just passed, which is wonderful to see. And we'll continue to take those on to our Board of Trustees and then on to FERC and, of course, our provincial partners. My contact information is right here, but I think part of this nifty Zoom interface is that you can get that from my profile now. But I want to just pause here. Thank you. I went through a lot of information and just open it up for questions.
Awesome. So we actually have two questions. I will read them to you, and then if we have any follow-ups, we can do that in the chat as well. Sahel Ahmad, I'm hoping I pronounced your name right, asked, given the current standards work around cloud and third-party applications, which will touch many SIP areas, do you see AI-related risks eventually being addressed as a separate standards effort, or more likely integrated into existing areas such as vendor risk, data integrity, access control, monitoring, and incident response?
Great. I'm not going to give you probably the answer that you want to hear, but I am going to give the answer that we have, which is we don't have that information because, again, we won't push a particular position. We don't push a particular way that a standard will be written. We do inform and have to sometimes set hard lines to ensure that we are meeting the actual risk and that we know that the standard will be effective, especially when those come to things of a high priority nature like cloud and AI. So I don't know what the solution will be. We'll be depending a lot on the information from the drafting team, a lot on the information from industry as they engage with that work as it starts, specifically with AI. That's going to be something that is currently in flux and by design because we want you all to be part of that. So don't have the answer to that. It might just be a new standard. It might be something that they work into how the cloud project is landing that solution, moving pieces in place right now. So we want to get a little bit more clarity before I can give you a little bit more of a concrete answer on that.
Wonderful. Any other follow-up questions to that, drop it in the chat and we will get to it. I am going to bring on Dmitry Bandarin, who has a question that he's going to ask. Dmitry, go ahead. You're on mute. Dmitry, you just have to unmute yourself. I cannot do that for you.
I do see another question, I think, from Rick.
Okay, yeah, let's move on to that one. And if Dmitry can ask a question, we'll bring him in.
It says, what information considering the amount, operations, and viability of the use of renewable energy production and storage is collected and shared with members and interested parties in all infrastructure projects? And how do we access the information? Okay, I would actually point to some of the electric information. I think it's administration. It's a department within the Department of Energy, or a group within Department of Energy, EEI, that collects and distributes this information. All generator owners of a certain size are supposed to respond to those data requests from the FERC and provide specific data. So you should be able to sort that by, I think it was the 470. I'm going to butcher it. I can't remember the specific form numbers, but it was a lifetime ago. But there's going to have to be some information you can get from there if you're looking for data specific. But I'd point to our assessments, our long-term reliability assessment specifically, to provide a little bit more, maybe a broader scope They look at how much is installed, and they're looking for reserve margins. They're looking for other issues and effective load carrying contributions, building in the outage rates, and just seeing what types of probabilistic analyses can be done to uh, verify that capacity will be sufficient in future years, as well as being resilient to other things. So I would point to maybe EEI for more granular data because we don't make that information public.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any follow-up questions on that, just drop in the chat. I'm going to give Dimitri one more chance to see if we can get off of mute to ask the question. And if not, we have another one as well. Okay, Dimitri, I'm going to take away the talking for you, but you can ask that question in chat or in the Q&A. Aaron Westberg had a question, one of our panelists for a little bit later. What proactive data sets and communications protocols are we growing as part of the standards, regulations, and registration process? And where is the future of data communication?
I'm probably going to need a clarification on that question. Data communication between a utility and, say, a user, such as one of these computational load entities, or between different utilities, or through to the regulator or to our regional entity counterparts? Or is it just meant more broadly?
I'm going to see if she would like to come up as in chat.
Okay.
Let's see. I'll give her that option right now. Awesome, Aaron, if you want to come up and chat, you can do so. You are
Yeah,
on.
thanks. I think my question is around all of the data sets and communications, which do you think are currently the healthiest? If that's between the regulators with the task groups and the learning sessions, or if that's, customer to direct data provider. I'm just curious what you think is currently healthy and where you think the future is going regarding the communication regarding, when I say data sets, I mean whether that's regulatory requirements or just communication between the off-takers.
Okay. There's a level of quality discussion in that when we're talking about, what information that's coming through the regulator or to the regulator in a specific way. Sometimes requirements are built not around can we get the data, but can we have consistency around the data? What's being collected we don't. The way I put it is mixing Skittles and M&Ms is a great prank, but it's not a good practice. We want to make sure that we're looking at the same things when we're comparing data. When it comes to the streams of that, I'm not sure I can answer and provide where there might be an unhealthy, or if there's an unhealthy area where we think information is not being exchanged, we're gonna do something about that. And that's either going to be through working with our regional entities, and they'll be doing those regional workshops, making sure that they can raise awareness and bring people into the conversation. But then there's also our technical committees, and at the end of the day, there are standards. So if we do see that there is a deficiency in some type of data exchange, we'll hone in on it and see what we can do to mitigate that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. I'm going to move you to backstage. Looks like your video froze a little bit there. But if anybody has any follow-up questions to that, please, again, drop that in the chat. Jamie, I do have one question, and then if anybody has any more, we can go there. If not, we can move into kind of our group chat networking sessions before the first one, or before the next one. We have quite a few different people here, right? So we've got in this webinar, we have folks who are coming from the tech vendor side. We have our folks who have entire career has been, inside of NERC, right? We have a lot of folks whose job title have NERC in it. We also have some folks on the finance side, the data center side. Of those groups, how should each of them be engaging with NERC if they aren't already? I think the answer, maybe the question I'm looking for is, is what is the easiest way to start engaging and helping form the direction that NERC is taking in their standards?
That's a great question. It depends on where you want to start. If the conversation for you is more getting into some of the technical details, being a little bit more focused on the data analytics and developing some type of analyses around where there are, where there are problems, and what recommendations might there need to be, identifying gaps in the standards. I would direct actually to our engineering side and looking at the Reliability, Security, and Technical Committee. Joining that, there's a lot of subgroups within that committee that would be more of an area of working sessions, at least staying up to date and informed on what is moving in, say, supply chain, or what is moving with, of course, large loads. My mind's blanking all of a sudden, but there's several working groups. Oh, of course, IBR, when we're talking about inverter-based resources more broadly, and there's one that's more focused on distribution area and how that's being calculated and brought into both operations and planning through the models. So if you're interested in that level of detail, I would highly recommend the engineering side of the house. If you're more interested in the solutions that we do with that information, that will be standards. I would just start by checking out our website, NERC.com. We've recently just done an overhaul and have a lot of available information on just going to standards, how you can get involved. It's really easy to reach out to a developer. We have just a basic email address to get more information. You can reach out to me directly, and we'll see if we can get you into a particular project, or at least aware of how to engage with the drafting teams in a more in a more direct way, especially if you have an area of interest. We'd want to get your expertise. I would love to say that every project has 70 to 100 different people nominate, but these are time intensive, especially the high priority projects. And this is voluntary work that people do on top of their day jobs. So there's for sure a vested interest that I know folks would have in joining those teams to be able to ensure that their company meets their company needs are being represented. But it's also just a great way of, again, networking and getting something through that is meaningful. We're not selling products here. We are making sure that the system stays healthy. And if it goes down, it's just, well, it just can't go down, or at least it needs to come back very quickly. So if that's important to you, I would suggest coming into the standard side and checking out the details, because those details matter. If we put a standard into place, we have the best information coming from the engineering side. But if we have a poor standard that doesn't necessarily address the risk, or just creates additional compliance burden unnecessarily, we've missed something. We've missed something very important. And so I would highly recommend just starting with that, looking at one of the drafting teams that might be interesting. All the calls are public, and those information's distributed through announcements. You'd be able to add yourself to that announcement list, and then, or that distribution list, and then just get inundated with all the emails that you'd love to see.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely reach out to Jamie or any of those resources, or go to any of those resources you mentioned. I think at least on the tech side of the world, NERC almost feels like a little bit of a scary black hole, right? Where it's like, oh, what's going on over there? But NERC is incredibly open. In fact, right, Jamie, I think we've talked about this before. Like, you guys don't want to be doing this alone, right? Like, it's the input of the folks on calls like this that really helps shape the future of where our power grid is going. We have one more question from Dimitri, who was trying to get on a little bit earlier. Data centers is one of the main drivers for load growth. The predictions vary significantly between 90 to 160 gigawatts by 2030. How do you deal with this growth and such big uncertainties?
It's an interesting question. So we will not plan and operate the system. We do our own assessments, and within those, our recommendations do not include and cannot include recommendations to do something specific with, say, like building additional transmission or generation, or just how people will plan. What we do require is that people study these issues. We make sure that the requirements we have in place to require studying issues are comprehensive and include these types of loads. So that's in the works right now. We've done similar things with inverter-based resources over the past few years, making sure that we were getting information we needed into the, and by we, I mean the collective, all of us, into the models to ensure we were seeing the same type of information in to the same level of quality. So we didn't just have these black boxes on the system that we were not able to really look into and see what they were actually doing in practice. So dealing with the growth, putting out assessments, building awareness, requiring them to comply with NERC reliability standards. But beyond that, that's our role. Our role is to ensure that there's a safe and reliable operation. We don't tell people where they can interconnect or that they even can, but if they're going to, here's what they must do to ensure reliability. Collection of access to the data. Rick, I might point you in the direction. I'm just sorry, I'm reading this question here from Rick. His follow-up. Our GADS, TADS, and DADS, which is the generator availability data system, they're looking at outage type information. You might be able to get something from our state of reliability report. I'm not sure what data we would be able to provide on a granular level. We collect things for the purposes of studying the system and doing our own analyses, but we don't share the data that's provided. We consider, depending on the data that we're talking about, could be critical infrastructure information, so we would be locked down.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. This has been an amazing session. Anything else you want to touch on before we move into a 10-minute networking break?
Just really appreciate the opportunity. I went back to my contact information slides. If you'd like to reach out and get involved, just let me know.
Nice. Well, thank you so much.